Hello and welcome to the first discussion of cryptocurrencies and fintech in the Cayman Islands. With me is Stuarts Humphries, the Managing Director of Stuarts.
Hello.
Chris has over 15 years experience in the fund industry in the Cayman Islands and has been developing our cryptocurrency practice and capabilities since 2016.
One of the main queries we receive from prospective clients is how are ICOs treated in the Cayman Islands. So we thought it would be worth having a discussion to explain at a very high level what the regulatory environment is like in the Cayman Islands as things currently stand. The first thing to say is that the Cayman Islands government has not yet passed any specific laws or regulations in relation to cryptocurrencies or ICOs. However, it would not be fair to say that cryptocurrencies and ICOs are not regulated in the Cayman Islands. In fact, there are a number of regulations and laws in the Cayman Islands that are relevant to ICOs and cryptocurrency funds.
The most relevant laws would be the Securities Investment Business Law, or SIBL, the Mutual Funds Law, the Money Services Law, the Anti-Money Laundering Regulations, and the Proceeds of Crime Law. However, as is often the case, in terms of how these laws will apply to your ICO, the answer is, I'm afraid, it depends. The application and effect of these laws can differ significantly based on, among other things, the nature of the tokens you are offering and the rights attached to them. What we hope to achieve through this discussion is to give you a general feel for the regulatory framework in the Cayman Islands, and of course, you should seek specific legal advice in relation to your ICO prior to launch. So, Chris, what is the Securities Investment Business Law and how could that apply to an ICO?
The Securities Investment Business Law is the Cayman Islands' primary legislation relating to the regulation of investment securities and associated businesses. Essentially, no person shall carry on business in securities investment business unless that person holds the appropriate license or is excluded from getting a license. The term securities is defined by reference to a list of particular types of securities. These include shares, stocks, partnership interests, instruments acknowledging indebtedness, options, futures, and such like. The definition is narrower than that used in the US Securities Act of 1933, as there is no corresponding concept of an investment contract. There is instead just a specific list of types of securities which doesn't specifically refer to cryptocurrencies or tokens. As the definition of securities and securities investment business are linked, because securities investment business includes dealing in, managing, and advising on securities, it is generally accepted that an ICO would fall outside this law. As always, it depends on the particular circumstances of the ICO, and so specialist advice should be taken on this point at the outset.
Thanks, Chris. The Money Services Law regulates money services business in the Cayman Islands. This would include businesses which provide currency exchange and money transmission services. In order for an entity to conduct money services business, it would need to be appropriately licensed by the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority. It is, in our view, generally unlikely that the Money Services Law will apply to an ICO, although it will of course depend on the particular rights attaching to the tokens and the offering itself. Again, specific legal advice needs to be taken on this point before an ICO is launched. If, on the other hand, you were looking to establish a crypto exchange in the Cayman Islands, then our view is that the Money Services Law would almost certainly apply and that a license would be required. This is probably a topic for a whole other discussion on its own, but is worth noting at this stage. Chris, perhaps you can talk about the possible application of the Mutual Funds Law in this context?
In circumstances where an ICO is related to an investment fund because it is tokenized or some other form of investment vehicle, the possible application of the Mutual Funds Law has to be considered. In general terms, the Mutual Funds Law regulates mutual funds, which generally is defined as a company, unit trust, or partnership that issues equity interests, the purpose or effect of which is the pooling of investor funds with the aim of spreading investment risk and enabling investors in the mutual funds to receive profits or gains from the acquisition, holding, management, or disposal of investments. The Mutual Funds Law should not, therefore, typically be a concern for ICOs. However, where an ICO relates to an investment fund or investment fund activity, the current definition of equity interests in the mutual funds law becomes critical. Currently, the mutual funds law defines equity interests as a share, trust unit, or partnership interest that carries an entitlement to participate in the profits or gain of the company, unit trust, or partnership, and is redeemable or repurchasable at the option of the investor. Accordingly, it is our view that tokens issued by investment funds would not fall within the current definition of equity interests by virtue of them not being a share, trust unit, or partnership interest. However, those ICOs which are structured as tokenized funds should take specific legal advice in connection with their structure, and critically, the rights attached to those tokens, as we're expecting changes to be announced later this year by the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority. We don't currently know what those changes will be, but it's prudent to anticipate that the definition of equity interests in the mutual funds law may be extended to cover cryptographic tokens. Should that occur, tokenized funds which offer token holders the right to redeem would likely require registration with the authority under the mutual funds law, and would need also to comply with the various requirements associated with such registration, including the minimum investment by prospective investors of at least $100,000, the filing of an offering document with the Monetary Authority, and the appointment of a local auditor. Stuarts are therefore offering a number of solutions to these funds to avoid the future registration issues if these changes are made, until at least we have some specific legislation or guidance from the Monetary Authority. How about the anti-money laundering regulations and the proceeds of crime law?
The Cayman Islands has established a comprehensive and robust AML regime, which is comprised of the following specific laws and regulations. The Proceeds of Crime Law 2017 revision, or PCL, the Anti-Money Laundering Regulations 2017, or the AML regulations, the guidance notes on the prevention and detection of money laundering and terrorist financing in the Cayman Islands, or the guidance notes. How do these apply to an ICO that is being structured using a Cayman Islands company? The PCL is of general application to all Cayman Islands entities and requires them to take certain steps in the prevention and detection of money laundering and terrorist financing, including the imposition of various penalties for non-compliance. The AML regulations are perhaps of potentially greater practical significance to an ICO by virtue of their wide application and the requirements for compliance. The AML regulations apply to those who conduct relevant financial business, which is defined by reference to a particular list of activities. The most obviously relevant activities to an ICO would be 1. Acceptance of funds and other repayable funds from the public, 2. Issuing and managing means of payment, 3. Money broking, and 4. Money or value transfer services. If an ICO issuer's activities fall within this definition, it would need to establish written AML procedures and policies, conduct identification and verification checks, including as to source of funds, and also appoint specific officers, such as a money laundering reporting officer, a deputy money laundering reporting officer, and an anti-money laundering compliance officer, among other things. It is therefore imperative that legal advice be sought as to whether the ICO in question constitutes relevant financial business, and if so, how compliance with the AML regulations is achieved. In particular, advice may be required as to how best to conduct identification verification checks and source of funds verification checks when the nature of the cryptocurrencies being paid in respect of the tokens being launched in the ICO are, by their very nature, encrypted. This is a complex area, and we can assist in making introductions to service providers who can offer solutions to these challenges, which are robust and compliant with Cayman Islands law, but also user-friendly.
This is, of course, just a snapshot of how the Cayman Islands law may apply to your ICO. In subsequent discussions, we're going to look at other areas in detail, as well as explaining why the Cayman Islands has become the jurisdiction of choice for crypto and the tech business. But should you require any advice in this area, please contact us.
Also, if there are any Other topics that you would like us to cover in future discussions, please do let us know and we will try to accommodate. We hope you found this video useful and thank you for joining us.